Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be having a flip through of my long-term collections bullet journal, or at least the one that I currently have for my long-term collections. I actually very much ummed and ahed about making this video because I've decided that I don't really want to use this journal anymore for my long-term collections. There are several reasons that have contributed to my change in preference, and I'll be talking about some of those as we go through. But because I will be setting up a new one, in a couple of weeks I'll have a video of a long-term collections plan with me. If there are any collections you think I should include in that new journal, do make sure to let me know in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get to flipping through. So as you can see, I have the Scribbles That Matter journal. I believe it's 120 GSM, the one that I got, with the navy iconic cover. And on the inside cover here, I just did some decorations with stickers, watercolor, and washi tape. After this we have the key and index. I didn't really ever need to use the key, but because it was already inbuilt into the journal, I put it in. And kinda similar with the index. I never really felt the need to use it, but because it was here, I kept it updated. The first collection that I have in this long-term collections journal though is a list of collection ideas. So layouts and spreads that I might want to include in this journal. You can see for the ones that I did actually end up making, I just put a little tick beside them, whereas the ones that I didn't get around to making are just left without. One of the things that I wanted to try for this long-term collections journal is having relatively simple layouts, just so it wasn't too taxing to keep up with or fill in. So for most of my pages, the only real decoration I have is washi tape or colour. After this I had a layout for my TV shows that I wanted to watch, where each of the little boxes represents a season, and then there's a little box at the start that I can colour in once I've finished watching that show. Again, just decorated with some washi tape. And after this we have my movies layout. Because I figured that there were going to be a lot of movies that I wanted to watch, and I didn't really want to have one per row, because I felt like that might be a bit wasteful in terms of space. What I instead opted in for was kind of like a running list that goes across each line, so at the end of any movie title I just write the next movie, and then the next movie, and then the next. Again, each of these had little boxes that I could colour in black when I'd watched that movie. We then had a single page dedicated to books that I wanted to read, mostly because I don't really read all that much. And similar, I had a list of games to play, just because I know that when I play a game, it usually takes a lot longer than watching a TV show or watching a movie. We then have my list of bujo themes to try. This one I certainly know I will be transferring into my next journal. Anytime I see a theme that I really want to try on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, wherever, I make sure to jot it down here so that I have that as a reference. We then have my Instagram follower tracker, which honestly was a very optimistic page. At the time of setting this up, I was seeing quite a lot of growth on my Instagram, which meant that the divisions I used here were by 500s. Nowadays I think it would be a lot more reasonable for me to have divisions of maybe 20 followers. But I've also decided that tracking my Instagram following isn't really something that I need in a long-term collections journal. Similar to this, I also had my subscriber count. And for this one I probably could have been a little bit more optimistic. But just like the Instagram follower tracker, I don't really feel like I need that in a long-term collections journal. After this we have a page dedicated to my wish list, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's a list of things that I want to buy, with a little box to colour in once I get it. And after this we have the apocalypse, or essentially a list of things I want to achieve before the apocalypse. This one was inspired by Mistral Spirit on YouTube, who got the idea from this TV show. After this, I then wanted to put in a list of my most commonly used accounts and some password hints. But now as I've gone and updated all of my passwords, and I use LastPass for all of those, don't really have a need for this page. On the other side of the spread though, I have a space to write down restaurants that I wanted to try, which sadly has not really been filled in. We then have a spread dedicated to Vogel and Mein's chore roster, so what needs to be done, the frequency at which it needs to be done, and who it needs to be done by. On this page there's also a little schedule here to note when those things would be done during the week. I then have a second YouTube subscriber tracker, which, as I already mentioned, probably won't be featured in my next long-term collections journal, and we have the first iteration of my monthly pages to include. So this is a list of any pages that I might want to include in a monthly setup. If you've seen my recent video of pretty much the same title though, you'll know that I actually did remake this page later in my journal. We had a layout that I started for an ideal weekly schedule, which you can see I started penciling some things in, put some washi tape in for my school days, but didn't really get very far with this one. And then we had a spread for my gifts that I either give or receive, but I never felt very inclined to actually keep up with this. I think that the information would be good to have, but I never really filled it in. We then have my things to adultify list, which is kind of like a wish list, but more things in my house that I want to update, or get a more adult version of. I had a page dedicated to my level 10 life, and the idea for this one is that I'm going to list out all of the categories that I have on my level 10 life anytime I do a spread on it, and then I'll write the dates along the top here anytime I do another level 10 life spread, just so I can kind of track how my ratings in each of the different categories would go. I still want to do that, haven't gotten around to it yet. I then had a reference page for the Atomic Habits cheat sheet from James Clear, which goes through the different way to make habit building easy, and then also how to break habits. I then had a page dedicated to habits that I wanted to track, and honestly I really don't like how this one turned out. Originally I had a different washi tape along the side here, which I decided I didn't really like the colour of, and I stuffed up my heading, so I put a box of colour over it, but then the colour doesn't match the washi tape, and still something I want to have in my new long-term collections, but not looking like this. We then have that monthly layout ideas page that I mentioned before, so the one that I set up as part of that video, and then also a page dedicated to how to fix mistakes in your journal. This one was also part of a video that I made a couple weeks ago. Given that this journal is for long-term collections, what I really try to put in here is only things that I'm going to want to reference over the life of multiple journals. So not like things that I'll need for just 6 months, but more things that I'm going to need for several years. So outside of the pages that I've already shown you, the other things that I have in here are really just swatch pages for different pens. But those I all like to keep at the back so that they were easily accessible. These swatch pages in particular are one of the main reasons that I've decided I want to change which journal I'm using for my long-term collections. For my current and previous 2 everyday bullet journals, I've been using Archer and Olive, but this is the scribbles that matter. Those journals have different types of paper, in particular with regards to texture and colour. These pages are more of an ivory or a kind of yellowish creamy colour, whereas the Archer and Olive paper is white. Like, really white. This means that any of the swatches that I do in this journal aren't necessarily reflective of how they'll show up in my Archer and Olive. So what I'm going to be doing is recreating my long-term collections in an Archer and Olive journal, just so that these pages are actually as useful as they can be. For the first of the swatches I did though, the first one was the Tombow Gel Brush markers, and you can see I set this one up to kind of look like my pen storage container. So the little circles on the side here are the hinges for the container, so this part opens out to this side, and then this one would open out to that side. After this I swatched my Staedtler Tri-Plus fineliners, in terms of the original 20 that I had and then the extra colours that I got as well. I had a swatch from my Papermate Flare pens, a swatch for my Ranger Distress Oxide inks, Crayola Super Tips and the Tombow Fudenosuke pens, a blank page, and then the acrylographs. Mainly because they are releasing new acrylograph sets and I wanted to have enough space for any of the new sets that come out. You can see I have some pink post-it notes here, just because under here there are some new colours that haven't quite made their way to the market yet. So, no spoilers. As you can see though, there is quite a bit of this book that's still left over, so I'm probably going to use it as scrap paper, or for notes, maybe trialing or mocking up layouts, things like that. But in terms of my long-term collections, they will be moving into a new journal. I do really like having a long-term collections journal. It's nice not having to redraw certain spreads every time I get a new day-to-day journal, for instance my Swatch Pages in particular. But question of the day for you guys though, if you had a long-term collections journal, what kind of pages would you include in it? As I said, I'm going to be coming out with a long-term collections plan with me in a couple of weeks. So if you hadn't already, do make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out. As always team, thank you for watching. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. Until next time, bye!